Hello and welcome to The Zach Brown Show, the show that introduces you to old friends for the first time. I'm your host, Zach Brown. Joining me on this episode is Steven Barr, lead pastor of Cast Member Church. Steven and I discuss what church looks like outside of the four walls, as well as how to better connect with those around us. All that and more coming up. Handcrafted under sunshine and fireworks, Core Memory Candles brings a level of quality that honors the Disney scents that they capture. Now your home or office can smell just like some of your favorite attractions and resorts. Whether it's flying over the crystal clear waters of Fiji, sailing past a band of merry pirates, or stepping through the doors of the Great Ceremonial House, the Walt Disney World Resort is chock full of memorable smells that stay with you long after you've returned home. Fortunately, Core Memory Candles has found a way to capture those smells and will send them right to your front door. Also available in wax melts and fragrance oils. But wait, you can also get face mask and fabric refresher sprays. I've personally bought many different scents and I can't wait to try more. You can get yours at CoreMemoryCandles.com. Core Memory Candles. Breathe, be home.
Steven, thank you so much for being on the show.
It is great to be here.
There are certain people that I have in mind for the show that I know I'm going to be excited to have them on to sit and discuss, but there are few people that I have a short list, I should say, of the people that I am just so excited about the conversation because I have no idea where it's going to go. And this is one of them.
That sounds more like a warning. Like, I don't know where this is going to go, but it's great.
So you are a pastor first and foremost, but not in the, I would say not in the package that most people would assume. I would say you pastor in the absolute simplest form of that is that you truly care for people and you do life with them.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm pastoral. I would say that, or I would say that I'm pastoral and not really have the gift of a pastor.
Okay.
Pastor kind of has this, at least in America, has that, you're the leader of the church, you're the teacher on the platform, you're the leader in the meetings, you're the,
right.
Which
the Americanized version.
Exactly. I think a little more along the lines of the spiritual gift. And that is more of a shepherd.
Yeah.
Although I don't think it's my gifting, but I love people. And I love looking for Jesus. I love looking for God at work in people who don't know that God's at work in them.
That's good. I like that. So well, let me ask you this, because maybe I don't know the full details. Are you originally from Ohio?
I am. I was born in Springfield, Ohio.
Okay.
And moved to Columbus, Ohio when I was a sophomore in high school. I-O. Met my wife was living in Ohio my first job as a worship pastor. Met my wife in the south of Mexico on a mission trip. Little promo for short-term missions. But we got married and lived in Columbus, Ohio for a while. Then ended up moving to San Antonio, Texas, where I took a role as a worship leader for a church there, and spent about 10 years in Spanish-speaking ministry.
Wow.
Yeah. And then...
and did you speak Spanish before meeting your wife?
I did not, but I was highly motivated. I do now. If I'm going to win any discussion or argument in our house, it's going to happen in Spanish. So yeah. And then was a worship leader for, I'm guessing around 25 years.
Wow. And
then it was getting close to the age of 50 and just started sensing that tug of the Holy Spirit that things were going to change. I loved leading worship. I loved building teams and all, but I felt like there were so many other younger people that were coming up that could do that. And God was slowly moving me over into church planting. And we were going to plant a church in San Antonio, Texas, which is a great place, wonderful place to do ministry. But as we were getting that off the ground, still didn't feel like things were right. Something just wasn't clicking. And one of my best friends, we were sitting in a Panera, and he says, "Steven, why don't you do this at Disney? You have such a heart for Disney. You have such a love for that environment. Why don't you think about planting a church at Disney?" And I was like, wow, that's a really interesting idea. And long story short, about a year later, that's what we did, and planted a church. Well, I would say we came to plant a church at Disney. We ended up with something completely different, but that was the idea.
Well, that was my question of how you ended up from Ohio to here. So you came to find yourself in Orlando from Ohio via
San Antonio. Actually, San Antonio, Texas, Durango, Mexico, Oaxaca, Mexico, back to San Antonio, Texas, and then Orlando.
Okay. There are people in your life that you meet and you go, oh, I like them. They're fun. Mm-hmm. But then there are those people that when you meet them, that there's no real reason why you feel that you click. Mm-hmm. For any other reason, but you just know it's like a God thing. Mm-hmm. And I can remember the first time meeting you and looking around your home and just thinking, oh, this guy likes Disney. Cool. I like Disney too. But there was something beneath the surface that I hadn't picked up on yet. And then we started talking about our faith and our beliefs and things. And I was like, wow, he believes a lot of the same thing that I do in the way. And you said this to me before, that it's kind of unconventional. And again, the way you pastor people, you shepherd people, you just love people. Right. And you don't come at that from the angle of being the guy on the stage, being the guy in the suit. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, again, the Americanized version of what that's supposed to look like. And I love that you do things in a way that's technically not the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, I think that I have to kind of premise it with this. When we started the church here at Disney, God gave us 3 mandates. Very clear. He was very, very clear. Number 1 is we were never going to own a building.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that was like, oh, okay, well, this is going to be different because I've always worked in a building before. So number 2 was that he wanted to grow this church out of people who had no clue who he was. And the third thing is we would do this through disciple multiplication. All 3 of those were kind of foreign to me. To be honest with you, 25 years as a worship pastor, I had never made one disciple. I had raised up really good musicians. We put together wonderful worship experiences, but I personally had never made one disciple. And now God was saying, oh, you're going to not own a building. You're going to reach people that you've never hung around with before, and you're going to cultivate a discipling culture. And so this was like totally out of my comfort zone. I still wanted to do the normal church thing. We came here to do an attractional, an attractional Disney style church. That was my plan. Emphasis, my plan. And I figured we could do it would be spectacular. I'd had lots of experience doing that. I knew how to do that.
You knew the formula.
I did. And I knew what worked. Mm-hmm. And, had been here for about maybe 2 weeks, started walking the parks and engaging with cast members. And I realized real quick that was never going to work. Number 1, you can't out Disney.
Sure.
I mean, no matter, I know we have the Holy Spirit and all that, but there's an element of that is not what God is interested in. Mm-hmm. He's not interested in the pixie dust. And so I realized all of my 25 years of experience was for nothing being here at Disney. For 2 weeks, Zach, I did not want to get out of bed.
Wow.
I thought I'd move my family here. We had sold our house in San Antonio, Texas. What have I done?
Yeah.
And I didn't want to get out of bed. And I ended up connecting with a person through a little conference that I went to that ended up becoming a discipler in my life. He discipled me, which was wonderful. Finally, I had somebody that I could imitate and use as a model for my life. But he said something that was amazing. I was sharing my frustrations with him the night I met him. And his name was Mike Breen. And Mike said, he says, Steven, if you plant a church, you might get disciples. But if you make disciples, you'll always get a church.
That's good.
Oh, man. And so I realized I've got this backwards.
Yeah.
So
he suddenly took the pressure off.
Well, exactly. Well, he took the pressure off and put a different burden on me because I still didn't know how to make disciples. And of course, God had also told us that we were not to focus on people who already knew him. Yeah. So I found myself engaging with people who had never, to this day, I still hang out with people who have never opened a Bible before. They don't know anything about the 4 spiritual laws. They don't really have an understanding of Christmas or Easter. To them, Jesus might be a character on Family Guy.
Wow.
I mean, this is hardcore in the sense of there is no point of reference. And so for me, my paradigm had to shift, and it didn't happen overnight. But God, over the course of time, getting into people's lives and hearing their brokenness and I've heard stories that will just curl your toes of what people have been through and the woundedness and the hurt that is out there, and listening to their stories and just valuing them.
Yeah.
Just listening. I don't care who they are. Their woundedness draws me to them. I feel their pain, and I believe, I know that is the Holy Spirit. And so for me to shepherd people, it starts there. I look for God's image at work in them. It could be a person I totally disagree with in every way you could possibly imagine. It could even be a person who's speaking offensively towards, my faith or something like that. I still see the image of God in them. And that, even if it's just a little tiny glint of a spark, it's enough to feed that spark.
Yeah.
And so for me, to be engaged with lost people, I even use that term, they don't know they're lost. They don't know, to engage with people who have no clue of a loving creator who has designed not only the universe perfectly, but has also put a plan in motion in each person's life that he's willing to orchestrate if they let him. I love reaching into those dark places and bringing light and hope.
And I love the best stories are the stories where all of the factors against the main character or the character in the story look impossible. Or they are out of the normal. They are things that you're not being set up for success. You're not going to do it in the normal way that you know how to do it, that you've been doing it for, decades. There's not going to be a building. All these things where nobody on earth would sign up for this mission. Every pastor listening to this is going, no thanks. I'm so glad that is not my calling. But that you go to those people, and I love your heart for people. It's not Messiah complex. It's not white knight syndrome, but you see the broken and you know the hope that you have and you see who created them and to share that with them, to bring healing, to bring hope, just to bring, like you said, value to them is such a special thing.
I love what you said because it's true. God waited until we were here in Orlando before he revealed that it wasn't going to be my plan. It was going to be his plan. And because I'm not sure I would have signed up for it because I was not equipped for this. And of course we know that, the statement is, God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called.
Thank goodness.
I know, but we literally were down here and we're desperate. I mean, it's like, okay, God, you're going to have to show up because I have no clue what to do.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where he's going, look around you. Just look around you. And I'll be honest with you, Zach, when I first got here, I was looking for the Christians.
Sure.
I was looking for the ones who already.
It's easy.
Well, it is. And, but God was very clear. And every time we tried to take shortcuts, and believe me, I've tried every shortcut in the book and, it doesn't work. God doesn't accept shortcuts. It was going to be no building, focus on those who don't know him and disciple them so that they could multiply. And as long as we have stayed with those, the church has been fruitful.
Yeah. So you are a cast member church at Walt Disney World, but you're not with.
Right. We're not associated with we're not associated with the Walt Disney Company. We're not endorsed. We're not supported by the Walt Disney Company, which is a good thing, because we are a church that we're not a part of the mouse, the magic, or the make-believe, as we like to say. We serve those who bring life to the mouse, the magic, and the make-believe. So it's all the cast members who, 74,000 of them, that's who we focus on. And so it's not the onstage persona that we get excited about. It's actually the behind the scenes, the backstage, walking to the parking lot after a long day of work, and all the real life situations that go on with them after that.
And I will say, not that it's a shortcut, because it's not. But the only thing that I would say is possibly a shortcut is that so many times, we're commanded to go into all the world, but we here
I know where you're going.
We have the great blessing of having 11 countries represented right here. The world has literally come to us, come to you.
Yeah.
And you have the great fortune that you don't need a passport, that it doesn't need to be any work visas, that you were able to go. And again, not with any agenda, not with any message, no pamphlets, no 12-step program. You were able to just go live it out in love. I hate the word witness in what it's become. Because I think as kids, we're taught, you need to witness to people. And if for whatever reason, we think that means to be standing on a street corner and shouting at people or, ramming it down someone's throat. But when you go to the original, it just means living it out.
Exactly. It's Jesus's definition of witness. He says, you are my witnesses, or you will be my witnesses. That's not a doing. That's a being.
Yeah.
And so it's not a, hats off to those who can hand out tracts and give God loves you stickers and all that kind of stuff. But relationship is where it's at. Yeah. Relationship, the hard, and I'll call it the hard work of relationship, the messy, the inconvenient, everything that goes with a relationship, the intentionality behind it. Having that at Walt Disney World, where we build relationships with people that do come from all over the world. I mean, World Showcase is a micro, United Nations, so to speak, right there. And for us, we look at Walt Disney World the same way the Apostle Paul looked at Rome. Paul could not wait to get to Rome because he knew if he could get to Rome, the gospel would go out. It would follow all the roads that Rome built. It would go to the ends of the earth. Walt Disney World is like a modern day Rome. The world comes here, not just as guests, but the world works here.
Yeah.
And they work here every single day. And all you have to do is walk through Epcot, walk through World Showcase, and in about 45 minutes or an hour, make your way around the lake right there. You can encounter so many different cultures, so many different languages, such a representation of God doing work in different people's lives in different ways.
Yeah.
And so for us, it just made perfect sense, to start there, because almost all of those cultures, I'm thinking in my mind, going all the way around the Seven Seas Lagoon, and realizing that most of those cultures are secular cultures. In fact, I think, all of them, I mean, with the exception of maybe Mexico, and Canada.
Yeah.
But even then, I mean, it's not great. There's so much potential to invest in those cast members and see what God's going to do.
And I think the biggest part of investing in people, you have to start with showing that you care. And you have developed this really cool thing. It's very simple. And just talk about your triangle.
Right. I talk in triangles. Yeah, I was going to say, if you spend half an hour with me, I'm going to be drawing triangles. I think in triangles, and it's not because of a Trinitarian mentality. It's just I can't remember more than 3 things at one time. So, but yeah, we do. I mean, remember, almost a decade ago, I didn't have any experience doing this. So everything that I now share with people is based on experience. It's not just, here's a theory, here's a new little tool that we've come up with. This is actually proven. And I'm a big fan of simplicity. I don't know about anyone else, but keep it simple and memorable. And so I think of a triangle, and the first side of the triangle on the right side. The first thing we do when we encounter people And I don't care who it is. It could be at Walmart. It could be at Disney. It could be at Walmart. It could be the guy who's changing your tires, anywhere. That is to express value in that person. See God in them and let them know. Now, I'm not talking about being preachy here. I see God in you. It's just letting them know. I love telling someone, hey, man, every time you walk into the room, man, it's just the joy goes up. You can just feel the temperature of the joy going up in this room. Every time you do that, or maybe I'm at the drive-thru at Wendy's and it's like, I recognize the voice on the, and I pull up and say, I was hoping it was you, and looking for the name tag, calling them by name, huge. And just expressing value, because we don't do it enough in this day and age. We do not value each other. We have opinions about each other and we know how to classify each other, but we do not value each other, especially those we disagree with. So the first side of the triangle is express value. The second step is simply build trust. Build trust. You've been expressing value, so now you have this opportunity to open up. But if we want people to trust us, we have to be willing to if we want people to trust us, we have to be willing to be honest and transparent with them. Especially when people know we're Christians, because they're thinking we're agenda driven. And the idea is, if I want you to open up with me, then I better be willing to share with you some of my woundedness, some of my brokenness. And here's something that I found that's very, very interesting. We don't connect to other people through our charisma. We don't connect with other people through our talent. We connect with other people through our brokenness. That's shared good. Brokenness. And that's the part we hide. As Christians, we are so good at that. We put on the Sunday face, not being critical, but let's be honest. We put on the Sunday face.
It's true.
It is good. It is good. But if we want Jesus to reach a person through us, we've got to be willing to reveal our brokenness. And when you and I connect through shared brokenness, it builds a bridge, and Jesus can walk across that bridge. So you have this trust thing that starts to go on. Then the third kind of follows logic. Offer hope. When you have built that trust and the person's like, wow, you do understand, then it's like, well, you know what? Let me tell you what happened to me as a result. And you just, you drip hope. I say offer hope, but it really is more about dripping hope. It's not like you throwing a bucket of hope, in their face. I always tell people, if they crack the door open a little bit, then you take a little bit. And you drip a little bit of hope. If they open the door wide, you put a lot of hope in there. But don't try to kick the door down, and don't try to slam it shut out of fear. Just take what they give you and be happy with that. The triangle, which again, express value, build trust, offer hope, is not a one-time conversation. I've been having this kind of conversation with the same people for 8 years. And it's just now producing fruit in some other people's lives. So this requires patience. And the beautiful thing about it is I can have a normal conversation with any of these people, and Jesus just drips in whenever he wants to. He just kind of comes in, and they're not weirded out by it, because they know it's part of who I am. And they don't reject it, because they know that I express value. I see them. I understand them, building trust, and I love them, offering hope.
And you're not just sitting there going, oh, we've worked to this point, I'm going to slam them with this really big hit of hope. No, like you said, you drip it in, you just live it out, and it's there. It's part of your natural conversation. And it's the same as if you're talking about your favorite sports team or whatever. It just comes through as something that you're very passionate about. And after a while they go, well, I know this person and we trust each other. So I'm finding and I value this, but all these things are building to that moment. As you're saying, I was almost seeing like two pieces of land in a bridge in the middle. And the trust is that bridge, is a suspension bridge. Do I trust this?
Exactly.
And only then is the trust leading to that hope. Mm-hmm. But you have to, you can't go out of the order, I don't believe.
Oh, yeah. I've had cast members introduce me to their friends, and they'll say, oh, yeah, this is Steven. He and Lucia, my wife, he and Lucia are religious, but they're the good kind.
That's great.
And I'm like, I take that as a compliment.
They're the good.
That's a compliment. I don't go, oh, it's not a religion, it's a relationship. And it's like, no, that is a compliment.
Yeah.
That is a compliment. And that, to me, they're just putting it in a language they know.
Absolutely.
They don't know. And so when I see those kinds of things, we have people, the table we're sitting at right now, over 1,000 Disney cast members have sat at this table. And 1,000 Disney cast members have encountered Jesus at this table. Okay. When we hear, and the number of tears that have fallen on this table, the number of fists that have pounded on this table, the number of times certain words have been uttered at this table, I can't count. But this table is the most sacred space in our church. But here's the beautiful thing. Almost every cast member has come into our home and sat here and said, I feel safe here. And I don't know why.
How special is that?
Oh my gosh. That's Jesus. All we've done is invited them in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all we do. And we're willing to sit and listen. I've heard, like I've said, I've heard terrible things. I've heard brokenness that just breaks my heart. But I know Jesus is sitting here too. That's why they feel safe. That's why every time I have a conversation with somebody at the table, I'm always looking for the empty chair, assuming Jesus is sitting there. I know that may sound silly to some people, but when I can imagine him sitting there, it gives me the courage to keep moving forward. But yeah, we have, in fact, almost every Disney cast member that is scattered around the world now has said that our favorite memory of our entire college program or our cultural representative program was being in your home. Hmm. And they don't say going to the parks. They don't say, anything. They say being in your home. And that's to Jesus' credit, not ours.
And such an honor to be able to, it's an honor to be obedient. Mm-hmm. It's an honor to be used. I was talking to somebody about this today. It's an honor to be included in what God is doing. Mm-hmm. I always hate when people say, I want to be a part of the next movement of God. It's very foolish of you to think that he stopped moving.
Right, exactly.
We have to be conduits. Uh-huh. And the fact that we are faulted, broken people, and anytime that God challenges you to be a part of something, what an honor.
Oh my gosh.
But that you've been able to, and again, not to take away from your credit, but that you have been used by God to touch as many nations and go to them, whether in their joy or their brokenness. Because it's not always you're going to their brokenness. I mean, I'm sure there's been many moments where
we've laughed. Oh my gosh. The joy in this room is amazing. The stories that have been told around this table, the games that have been played. And, of course, one of our favorite things to do is sit around the table and say, okay, tell me your funniest cast member story.
Sure.
Yeah. Many of them I could never repeat, but they are the laughter and the connection that we make. And here's the wonderful thing. Of course I want them all to encounter Jesus. I mean, but my agenda is not to get them saved, because to be honest with you, scripture says that it's God who draws us to his son. So we just simply present an environment where God can do that.
Yeah.
Now, I am always ready to tell somebody about what Jesus has done in my story. But at the same time, it's always better once they know that I value them, that I've built trust with them, then they're ready to receive hope.
Yeah. I don't want to simplify it to this level, but it's almost like you can't force two kids to be friends. You can just set up the play date and really hope that when they come together, that all of a sudden they go, hey, I like this guy.
Right.
And you're not forced that you are creating a place where they, big, huge key thing, they feel safe.
Yeah.
And they can trust it, and they know that you're not coming to shove whatever it is that you're believing into their brain space.
Right.
And if they don't, that you're going to be upset.
Yeah.
Because that, I think, is huge, that you allow them to be themselves. Still offering the hope, but still allowing them to be them.
Well, here's the thing here, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but here's the whole reason for that triangle: express value, build trust, offer hope. Every human being has three emotional needs: to be seen, to be understood, and to be loved. That when we express value, we say, I see you. When we build trust, we say, I understand you. And when we offer hope, we're saying, I love you. And that to me is the best place to do that is in a smaller environment, a dining room table, a table in Starbucks, one-on-one, one-on-two, whatever. But just being in those environments where you're actually listening. I've heard, people that I don't agree with. And there's certain things about their lives where I'm like, it breaks my heart to hear, what the roads that they're going down. But I hear their stories and I go, oh my gosh, I understand. If I was in their situation, I don't know what I would do.
Yeah.
So the idea is, God, give me the compassion to understand rather than to reject. Give me the compassion to see what you see, to give me the ears to hear what you hear, so that I know how to respond the way you would respond. And if we're his hands and feet, that's exactly what we're called to do.
Lead me in your love to those around me.
Yeah. You're talking to a guy who for 25 years focused on the Sunday morning experience, which is great, mind you. That was my call for 25 years.
Yeah.
But what I'm doing now I'm not involved in a Sunday morning gathering at all. I'm spending my days connecting with people that are so far from God. They don't even know it, that are so hopeless, so broken. I love, because that's where Jesus is. Yeah. That's where I'm finding him. I'm finding him out there. If you want to look for Jesus, look for him in the mud and muck of life.
Yeah.
That's where he's going to be.
Hang on for a second. We got something to tell you.
The Zach Brown Show is brought to you in part by Fisher's Subliminal TV Dinners. Just imagine how full you'll be. And Darby's Gunpowder Malt Liquor, the beer that will blow your mind.
And what I love, I think this is encouraging to people, that you're always engaged with people, no matter what. If you're leading worship on the Sunday morning experience, you're doing this now. But they're still very different things. Very different things.
Oh, absolutely.
And you didn't tell God, well, no, I'm a musician. I'm a worship leader. I once heard Beth Moore.
I think I might have thought about it.
Well, I heard Beth Moore say this, and I thought this was really good, and it really wrecked me. And I don't know if I've talked about this on the podcast before, but she said this at a Passion conference. And she said, there's so many people that say, my calling is to be a pastor. My calling is to be a worship leader. My calling is to be a what? She said, no, your only calling is to be obedient.
That's good.
And so you are obedient to that. You didn't tell God, no, this is the box that I'm in. He was saying, well, yes, you were obedient to that calling for now or for that season, but now I'm shifting you here because this is where I need you to go.
Yeah.
And how, again, being open and willing, that blessing of being included in what God's doing, the key is obedience.
Yeah, you can't, I think it's really weird when we moved to Florida. I still was a worship leader in a church just to help provide some income for my family, and I did that for a while. But something happened after, I can't remember, must have been like year 3, something like that, where God said, "You're done. The worship leading is done." Now, keep in mind, when you're a musician, let's be honest, it's part of your identity. 100%. That's how you communicate. That's how you express your feelings and all that.
It's not what you do, it's who you are.
Exactly. And if, anyone who's a musician knows exactly what I'm talking about. But when God said, you're done, I need you to focus on Cast Member Church as the leader of the church. You can't split, this. And I actually felt released. I mean, if you would have known me 15 years ago, I would have never gone for that.
Well, let me ask you this. Were you in a season of your ministry when God called you to shift? Were you still in love with doing that? Or were you more on the kind of, I'm kind of tired of this? Not that it had to be one or the other, but were you in a place?
That's a really good question. I feel like,
and I'm asking that because of your saying there was a release. So I'm wondering, or relief, I should say.
Well, I think the relief came in that I was starting to feel the stress of trying to do both.
Okay.
And keeping in mind also that, I was making income from leading worship. So when God said you're done, it wasn't just you're finished with music, that income is going to go away. And I had to decide, is God my source for provision, or is this job my source? I love doing it. I pick up a guitar at least every 2 or 3 days because that's just how I am. But I literally gave notice and I said, hey, 3 months from now, I'm going to step down from this role. And they were very gracious. Disappointed, but very gracious. But I knew that Cast Member Church needed a pastor that was not trying to do two different things. I was willing to work bivocationally, but I knew that singing, I needed to lay that down. It was just one of those things where I had to lay it down. But I was surprised by how easy it was for me to lay it down.
Okay.
And it was not, when I say it was a release, it was almost like God was turning the page. He just simply was turning the page. And it's like, okay, now on to this. Yeah. I will tell you that there was a magnetic pull that was beginning to happen because of my love for Disney cast members.
Yeah.
When you realize I need to give more and more of my time to that. And, like I said, there's another worship leader could easily fill that job. It was not like I was it, So I was happy that they found, but now I was able to immerse myself even more into the cast member culture.
And God placed you in a place where, like you said, you had a heart for it. I think too many times when you hear people talk about being a missionary in a third world country, it's always, I shouldn't say always. A lot of times it almost comes as this burden, or that it's going to be something that they're going to hate doing. Why would we think that our very Creator is going to place us in something that we are not geared towards?
Right.
If God is calling you to be a missionary to Africa, I think that there's something in your being that has a heart for Africa.
Yeah, that's right.
Because He's not going to send you someplace that you're not going to serve joyfully.
Right.
And with just a glad and light heart.
Yeah.
Because you won't be doing a good job. He's not going to, there's not going to be any success there, or again, a joyous obedience rather than the sacrifice. So sending you in a place where He'd already crafted this in your very being. He sent you to this place where He said, I've given you a heart for this.
Yes.
Now go.
Yeah, and yet it was not, like I said, when we came to Disney, you're right, I had a heart for it, but God said, you still don't have the right heart for it. I mean, so I was wired for Disney. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, anyone who has known me for a long time would know that I was wired for Disney, but that's what got me here.
Right.
But once God had me here, it's like, it's time for your wilderness experience. It's time for me to strip away your agenda, your plans, your vision, and I'll give you mine. That was the hard part because I worked really hard on that vision. Somewhere buried in my office closets is a master plan that I had come up with for.
And you told God, "Don't worry, I've got this
covered. Yeah, I've got this all covered."
You just sit back on this one. I'll take the lead.
Exactly. And I'm telling you, in just a 24-hour period, I can remember those days clear as a bell. It's like He took that notebook and dropped it in the trash. And He said, if this is my church, if you want to do this, it's going to be my way.
Yeah.
And He had me. I was in between a rock and a hard place. I couldn't go back to San Antonio. So He had my attention.
Yeah.
And, so I was wired for it, but I still was rough around the edges. He needed to soften me up. He needed to smooth me down so that my motivations were right.
Yeah.
So He'll take, it's interesting. He'll take, even some of our, how do I put this, self-serving plans. He'll take those and
which we are coming in assuming that we're doing it with the right heart. But still self-serving.
Yeah. Oh, looking back now, I had myself convinced.
Yeah.
Because that's what was so hard. It's like, God, why'd you do this? And so it came to that place where He started showing me the brokenness And I was like, oh my gosh. And then I felt overwhelmed. I mean, I was literally seeing a sea of cast members, walking through Magic Kingdom. And this is something really kind of cool. I could walk through a park on a busy day, and God was able to, all I saw were cast members. I didn't see the guests. And if you've ever been at a park on a crowded day, you realize that's miraculous. But all I saw were cast members. But then all I saw was brokenness. And people that were searching for answers. People, it was almost a supernatural experience. Well, it was a supernatural experience, and it became overwhelming. And it's like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And fortunately, my wife works for Disney, and she heard the stories even before I did. Connecting with cast members. Now, God was like, it was almost like, this is what I've called you to. But we started realizing we're going to do it one at a time. And that was almost 9 years ago. And now I look back and, I have a wall in my office with cast members that I'm currently discipling, and they are cast member church. They represent, I joke with pastors, athletes and artists have awards on their walls. Pastors have books lining their walls. I have photos of people on my wall, because that's what cast member church is.
Yeah.
Cast member church is about people. And I can point to you could point to any photo on that wall, and I could tell you their life story. I could tell you not only where they've been, but how Jesus has brought them to where they are now.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is the greatest joy of being in this kind of environment.
And that's beautiful. I've been a part of some mega churches, or, numbers speaking. And, there's times when I could look across the room and go, oh, I know them and them and them. Mm-hmm. But how many people who are part of my quote unquote church family, the body, that I have no idea who they are, what their name is, what they care about in life. Or how many people who look their experience on a Sunday morning or a Wednesday night, whatever, is they walk in the door, they have their experience, and they leave. And you could ask them, say, do you know the pastor? Do you know if they know you? And they could probably tell you no. But that you've made that connection with those people. Again, the value, the back and forth of knowing their story is such a special thing. And I love hearing that, because it means that there's at least one in the world that's doing that. Well, and I know there's many.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But it has nothing to do with four walls. It has nothing to do with 4 songs on the front, message, maybe 1 on the out. Please drop your money on the way out and return your 3D classes before you leave. You're handling in this in the way that you know you are called.
Yeah.
It's not a formula.
No.
But it works.
But it's simple.
It's simple.
It's simple. And I tell people all the time, look, Jesus called us to make disciples. Why would he make it so complicated that nobody would want to do it?
Yeah.
Well, the fact of the matter is the church has made it complicated. It's like, I can't make disciples. I don't have a seminary degree, that kind of thing. Here's what it comes down to. And the guy who discipled me, Mike Breen, said, disciple making is simple. It's just hard. It's just hard because we're dealing with people's lives, and people's lives are all about, their mess, their brokenness, but we also get to see their redemption. We also get to see, I get a front row seat every week to people's lives being changed. We have one measure in our church. When I went through all my church planning boot camps and all that kind of stuff, you had to have your mission, your map, I can't even remember now, all of that stuff that we had to put together and all
these catchy things for you.
All these catchy things, that we had to have, and that's where the notebook came from, of the plan. And you know what? We have one measure, and it has nothing to do with numbers, because first of all, God is not impressed with numbers.
Yeah.
The question is, for me, for you, or anybody as a part of Cast Member Church, did I bring others one step closer to Jesus today?
Yeah.
That's it. If you have, you can sleep tonight. And if you haven't, tomorrow's a do-over. That is the beauty of of living for Christ. Sometimes I'm able to bring a person 10 steps closer to Jesus in a conversation. Sometimes it's a step, but that's up to God. As you said earlier, it's about obedience. It's just it's like, Lord, how can I bring this person one step closer to Jesus today? And I could be in my grocery store. I could be looking at, it's Melissa has the name tag. I say, hey, Melissa, how are you doing today? I'm doing well. Did you find everything you're looking for? Of course, I did. But so is this the end of your shift or the beginning of your shift? Oh, it's the end of my shift. I said, are you going to have days off? Or just starting a conversation. Guess what? Melissa remembers me the next time I go in.
Yeah.
And so that conversation.
Because you took time to acknowledge that she is a human being.
I expressed value.
Yeah.
I expressed value, and little by little build trust. There was a point where I knew every person that worked in my local grocery store.
Wow.
I knew every person, and I could tell you who was going to college, who was getting married, who was getting, just simply because I wanted to express value.
Yeah.
And we are capable of that. We as followers of Jesus are capable of doing this. We've just forgotten to be intentional about it.
And I think that's key. Just being intentional.
Yeah, exactly. When I get up in the morning, if I'm going to Disney or if I'm going to get my oil changed, it's like, well, whoever I encounter today, I want to bring them one step closer to Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's really what it comes down to. Anybody can do that, not just a pastor, but anybody can do that. It can be done at Disney and it can be done in Des Moines, Iowa. It doesn't matter. Now we have our churches on 6 continents. Because all we've done is we've been expressing value, building trust, offering hope, and bringing people one step closer to Jesus every single time.
Yeah.
That's it. It's that simple.
And again, like it's talking about it being on different continents, just starting with hey, you should probably go try that at Disney Orlando. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Just for all intents and purposes, a simple idea, a simple direction. Mm-hmm. You weren't told to go and try to plant a church on a hillside in Nicaragua. Mm-mm. You came to a very well-off area of the world, let alone the country. But again, you were faithful with that. And I just have to go back to the obedience because so much of that is that command. Mm-hmm. And this is something that's been big in my discussions lately with different people is I think too many times we're too loud with God. It's like if I asked you a question and instead of waiting to hear your response, I just kept talking.
Oh, that's agenda driven. Yeah.
And if you come to God with a question or direction, or he gives you direction and I need direction. How's this supposed to go? Well, what are the details? Whatever. Not all the time we get details. I mean, you didn't get your shakeup until you were here. Right. But when you're quiet and listen for those directions, not necessarily a very pretty segue, but to go from obedience and listening to that voice, tell the Morocco story.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking about that when you were saying that. We have, my wife is Lucia, co-leads this church with me, and she is, she's an intercessory prayer warrior. I mean, she loves to pray. I have ADD. I'm lucky to get through 60 seconds on my knees and, my brain goes somewhere else.
There are people listening to this that are very encouraged.
Exactly. I have to find creative ways to pray, which is, that's a topic for another time. But my wife, she likes to get up early in the morning and pray. And I mean, she really takes it seriously. And if she says she's praying for you, I guarantee you she is praying for you. Well, one morning, she's praying and she sensed the Holy Spirit telling her to go to Morocco, which is a country in World Showcase at Epcot. Fortunately, she knew that it was not the real country. And, so she did. But here's the funny thing. God told her, I want you to go to Morocco but don't tell Steven. Okay. Now I don't know any of this, right? She goes to work that day, comes home, and we're having dinner together. And she says, hey, do you want to go to Epcot tonight? I thought, wow, she just has been working at Epcot all day. And I'm thinking, wow, okay, sure, date night. This sounds like fun. So we finish up dinner and we head over to Epcot. First thing that happens is we discover that it was the first night of Arts Festival, which was a crowd nightmare to say the least. And of course, I'm a little on the, I can't believe I'm kind of complaining. And she says, oh no, it's okay. That's my wife. And so she says, let's go to World Showcase. I'm like, oh, okay. So, I could tell by her pace that she was wanting to go somewhere. I'm usually the one who walks fast, but she was walking faster this time. And I thought, oh, okay, so we get to World Showcase and we pass Canada. And I'm like, okay, I guess we're not going to Canada. And then we came to UK and I think we went into the tea shop and, went in there for a second and then went to France, walked past France. I could really tell she wanted to go somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I thought, okay, well, maybe there's somebody she wants to see that's at work, that she's going to visit. And then we came to Morocco and she said, let's go in here. I said, oh, okay. And now I'm really sensing something is up and I don't know what. And we go and we sit down on a bench inside. If you go into Morocco, it's kind of inside there. And we sat down on this bench and she says, okay, let me tell you why we're here. I thought, okay. I knew there was something up here. She said, when I was praying this morning, God told me to come to Morocco. And I said, oh, okay. All right. And she says, and he told me not to tell you. And of course, I didn't know who to be mad at. I was either mad at Lucy or mad at God for telling her,
what have I done wrong?
Excuse me. Then I thought, well, you know what? I probably would have screwed it up. If she had told me, then we probably would have just, you would
have got out the notebook again.
Yeah, I pulled out the notebook, the strategy. There's a reason we're here. Yeah. So we just sat on the bench and she said, so let's just pray. Let's just sit here and we'll just pray. So we did. And we're just kind of sitting there. I think maybe every now and then we'd say something out loud, but we were just basically a couple sitting there praying quietly and silently. And all of a sudden Lucy goes, oh my gosh. I said, what? And she said, I feel Jesus sitting beside me. Now, that's a strange, when I say that out loud, I know how strange that sounds, right. But I also know my wife.
For the non-believer, this sounds incredibly kooky.
Exactly.
Even for the passive believer.
Yeah, I was going to say, even for the believer, it's like, oh, okay. But she was like, oh my gosh. And she says, I feel Jesus sitting here with us. Mm-hmm. And I said, oh, okay. As soon as she said that, I could see a Moroccan cast member in one of the shops look our direction. And she was wearing a hijab, which, it meant she was Muslim. And of course, all the Moroccans that work in there are Muslim. She looked our direction. As soon as Lucy said that, she was far enough away, she couldn't hear what Lucy would have said. She looked at us and just started waving. And that was the weirdest thing to me because it's like, I've never had a Moroccan cast member wave to me before. And so
out of all the people in that
out of all the people. And so we're sitting there and of course we smile and wave back, And so we sit there and I said, well, let's just pray for that cast member. So we sat there praying for that cast member. We're watching her do her thing. And she was coughing. I mean, just constantly, you could just see her coughing. And finally we finished praying. I said, well, we've got to go up and say hi to her. I mean, she did wave to us. Let's not be jerk Americans here. So we went up and, introduced ourselves and, she introduced herself to us. And I said, I see you're coughing. You don't feel well. And she says, oh, I don't. I'm allergic to incense. And I thought, well, you're in the wrong country. Because if you've been in Morocco, it smells like incense everywhere. And so we just started talking to her. And, it was a great conversation, just a wonderful conversation. She told us a little bit about herself. We told her about ourselves a little bit, very cordial. And my wife even said, hey, I work here. I'd love to come in and check on you sometime, see how you're doing. She said, oh, I'd love that. And that was it. And we started to walk out of Morocco. And, we got to almost ready to walk down the main thoroughfare. And I sensed from God, you're not done yet. And of course, I'm thinking, oh, is this my strategy or is this?
Yeah.
But I told Lucy, I said, I don't think we're done yet. And I don't know where this came from. I don't know if it was just wisdom or if it was the Holy Spirit or both. I don't know. But I said, I think you need to go back and talk to that cast member by yourself without a man there. Mm. And Lucy's like, okay. So I said, I'll go sit down over here and you go. And 10 minutes passed, 20 minutes passed, 30 minutes passed. And Lucy comes walking out and she's waving a piece of paper. I said, what's that? She said, it's her phone number. And she started, and she had opened up to Lucia saying that she is so lonely. She has no friends. She's living here in the United States, hasn't seen her family in 3 years. Mm-hmm. She's living in the United States, working at Disney, going to school, is totally isolated. And Lucy said, why don't we go out for dinner? And so that turned into this beautiful relationship, this beautiful friendship. She became part of our family. She came over to our house for dinner and just, we adopted her, so to speak. And then one time we were realizing that she hadn't seen her family in 3 years.
Wow.
And I just thought, Lucy knows what that's like. My wife's entire family lives in Mexico. She's the only one in her family who lives here in the United States. Wow. Mm-hmm. And so Lucy hurt for her, that building trust. Yeah. And she understood.
It's more of that. I understand.
Exactly. And so Lucy says, I want to do something. I think we should do something. So we simply contacted our prayer team. We have a Facebook prayer team that prays exclusively for Cast Member Church. It's a private group. And so it's all confidential prayer request kind of thing. And we put it out there. They said, hey, there's this cast member that needs, that really needs to go home to see her family. And we would pray would you pray that God would provide a way for her to go? In less than 12 hours, all the money was provided. Wow. I didn't even ask for a penny. And I was getting contacted by all these people in the prayer team saying, we want to help. We want to help. Yeah. We were able to sit down with her at this table and a few days later and say, it's really been tough that you haven't been able to go home. She says, I know. And she tears in her eyes and said, we just wanted you to know something. We love you and we want you to be able to go home and see your family. So we have the money for you to go home. She was speechless. One, she couldn't think about it. Americans, for one. Yeah. Christians, coming alongside this Muslim girl and
different backgrounds, different beliefs.
Exactly. And we told her, we said, look, we've been praying that God would provide a way for you to be able to go home. And we had told her that we were going to pray that God would provide a way. And we said, look, God answered our prayer. Yeah. And so we provided a way for her to go home. She's still a part of our family. She's opened up doors to other people, in her culture. It's given me an incredible sensitivity to Muslims, totally misunderstood culture. It's given me a heart to love them and be Christ to them in a way that they understand. Yeah. And that's just one cast member. There's hundreds and hundreds of other stories, but that's such a powerful one because what God taught us in that whole series of events, 74,000 cast members at Walt Disney World, and God chose one that night that He needed us to go see. We call it the value of the one. And the next time anybody feels like their issues don't matter to God, that's a lie. That's a lie. When He is willing to speak to my wife at 5:00 in the morning and send her to a place and all these order of events for one person.
And I think, you could have the skeptical person or the person that wants to challenge that come from one angle and say, look at all the things that had to go right for that to work. But what I see is a divine master plan, a sovereign God looking and speaking to His various children in different places in the world, different places in life and their belief, their understanding. And He's going, I'm causing you to see value in this person. And I need you to be intentional and to go step forward. And without directly saying this to that cast member in Morocco, to say, I care enough for you that I'm going to go get someone else to bring them to you, to share that value, that love. It's so incredible. Like you're saying, the value of the one, the power of the one, it's incredible.
And the thing for us is, it would have been real easy to say, well, we need to lead her to Jesus.
Yeah.
And
to force your thoughts.
To force our agenda. Do I want her to see her come to Jesus? Of course I do.
Yeah.
But he is going to do it in his time, his way. She's still not a believer, but she's a part of our family. Yeah. She comes to cast member church events. She comes to, when I say events, I mean little gatherings that we have. Yeah. She's a part of that. And it's always kind of fun to see, her in those environments. But she feels safe here. A little tiny insight to this. The night before she left for Morocco, Lucy was going to take her to the airport, and it was a very early flight. So Lucy said, why don't you stay at our house the night before, that way we don't have to pick you up and you'll be ready to go. And we can just go straight to the airport. And, I had to fly to Costa Rica that same morning, but even earlier than that. So I wasn't going to be able to be here. And my son gave up his bedroom for her to stay in so she could sleep. When she got up that morning, Lucy said, hey, she said, did you sleep okay? And she said, I slept better last night than I have in my entire life. And again, I believe it's Jesus. Yeah. I believe the peace of Jesus. And it's hospitality. It's valuing people. It's all these things we know about.
Yeah.
But never really put them into practice with intentionality. And I pray the day will come when she's going to come to know Jesus. I really do. I pray for that day, but it will come in his time. Doesn't mean we are expressing value. We're building trust. We're offering hope.
Well, you said in his time. I think it's important to, think about that the value, give it to me one more time. I'm sorry.
Expressing value, building trust, offering hope.
And then hope. But that there's not a specific timeline for any one of those.
Nope.
That it could take 12 days. It could take 12 years.
Oh, yeah.
But that intentionality is where it all comes into play. And to understand, I think too many of us come into this Christian walk and think that anything that we're given is going to be a sprint. Know that some of it's going to be.
Well, we're given, I don't want to be critical, but we're given, there are there used to be Christian bookstores where books on the ABC method. Here's, 5 steps to church growth and all these different things. And I'm going, it is not like that. It is.
And then if you don't do it this exact way, then you fail.
Yeah. And
how discouraging.
Of course, well, how many pastors get frustrated after going to a conference and they come home and they try to implement and it's like, well, it didn't work for me.
I implemented every note.
Yeah. It's because it was for Saddleback. It was not for, you. Yeah. The key is, instead of following steps, follow principles.
Yeah.
That's the key. Jesus gave us principles, and, valuing the poor. That's a principle. The widow, the orphan, those are principles. Making disciples, that's a principle. Loving your neighbor, that's a commandment. But that's but these are our principles. If we actually put them into practice, but with intentionality. I tell people, here's a great way for someone to apply this. Again, express value, build trust, offer hope. Pick one person this week that doesn't know Jesus. Or pray. Ask God to show you one person that doesn't know Jesus. Don't go ballistic with this, but just start expressing value. With that one person. Maybe it's the grocery store. Maybe it's grocery stores are a great place to start. I mean, because we have to go there.
Yeah.
Okay. But maybe
it doesn't take a lot of effort.
Yeah. But maybe it's at school. Maybe it's at school. Maybe it's online. But just start expressing value. And as you're doing that, ask God, how can I start building trust? Mm-hmm. Don't get ahead to expressing or offering hope. Don't jump over. Just start building. Enjoy the journey. Yeah. We as Christians are so focused on the destination. Jesus loves the journey there, because kingdom work is now. The kingdom is here. It's the kingdom. We are it. We're the kingdom. And so we have that opportunity to represent and influence in a way that is supernatural.
Yeah.
But we just don't think to do it. And so I always encourage people, start with one person. And my prayer is that God will just start building layer upon layer of value and trust and eventually hope.
Yeah. And
here's what I found. I have, like I said, we've had 1,000 cast members sit at the table that we're sitting at right now. Well over 1,000. Even if they don't come to know Jesus in the course of our relationship, all right, which may be that they won't come to know Jesus through us.
Yeah.
Number one, we will have done our part, right? Number two is we will have enjoyed a precious friendship that we never would have had otherwise.
Yeah.
The journey there. Now, I pray for every cast member that they come to know Jesus. That is my desire. But I love the journey there. That's why I'm able to not get in a hurry. That's why I'm able to drip hope, so to speak, as we go. And that's why we have such a connection with so many cast members after all this time, scattered all over the world.
And how wonderful is that? And it makes the world that much smaller.
It
makes the world become the small town because you have that. And I think, like you said, it's the time. There's two things in this world that I think are the most precious thing that we can have. The most precious gifts we're given are people and time. And when you give time to people and people to time, it becomes a really wonderful thing.
That is really good.
Because you're able to, again, it's not about rushing past it. You're sitting there. You want to hear the stories about what they were doing in summer camp or what happened on the way to your house today. Like you said, the funny cast member stories, because that's the value. You're trusting them.
Exactly.
I believe John Maxwell said this. I could be wrong. That you can only be loved to the extent that you're known.
Well, that's very true.
So to get down to those levels of each other, because you can only expect them to be as broken and vulnerable and ugly as you allow yourself to be with them.
That is absolutely true.
And to get those places, it's special because once you leave that and you come back, it's like when you go on vacation with somebody. It's either you're going to be friends with them forever or you're never going to talk to them again. But,
so true.
But after that, you go, man, we're at a whole other level. We're at those places. Family dinners are that way. Family in floats.
Oh, yeah.
So these people, these thousands of cast members, the world that has been represented in this space right here, those bonds that are made that are now going over time zones and all those things. It's powerful.
The sun never sets on cast member church.
That's amazing.
That's what's really cool about this is there is, I say 6 continents, one day a cast member will maybe be working in Antarctica and we'll actually get that 7th continent. But for us, it is, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. But, and I'm not saying this with pride. I promise you this does not come from a place of pride, but we should expect this.
Yeah.
We should expect this because Jesus told us these things would happen. And it's just a matter of saying, you know what, Jesus, you said you were going to do this, so we're going to do that.
Well, I think the two, I don't want to say the 1-2 punch, but it is that in addition to intentionality, you come expectant. Lecrae said you don't pray for rain if you're not going to bring an umbrella.
Exactly.
So what's the point of what is the point of doing this if you're not expecting it to, for lack of a better term, to work?
Right.
You should just go ahead and just close up shop.
Right.
Stop what you're doing. Try something else.
Right.
Because everybody, if you're going to set out to make a buck, don't come home until you got the buck.
Right.
If you're going to make music, don't leave till you've written the song.
Right.
If you're going to go love people and expect to show them Jesus, I don't even want to use the word win them to Christ. All you're seriously supposed to go do is just show them Jesus.
Right. Right.
If you're not expecting that to happen and expect the transformation of people's lives, you're missing it.
Well, and that you bring up a really good point when you talk about winning people to Jesus. That's the problem that we focused on.
It's prideful.
Yeah. Well, we think we're the ones that do it. Yeah. Number 2, we think that's the end game. The end game is, we got them saved.
Met them done.
Boom, we're done.
What happens next?
Yeah, exactly. And Jesus, and please, and I am not devaluing salvation. Huge step. It's a life and death step that that a person takes, but it is not the end of the journey.
Right. It does not stop.
It is a turn of the page. It's maybe let's call it a turn of the chapter, but this is actually a journey. That's why we are discipling people before they come to Christ. We are pouring into them with the expectation they will come to Christ. But once they've come to Christ, they're going to go, oh, I know what you've been doing all this time. And they will actually be able to start making disciples on day 2 because they've already seen it modeled for them. Yeah. Why did the disciples, when Jesus ascended into heaven, they waited 40 days for Pentecost, but when Pentecost hit, they knew what to do because they had seen Jesus do it for 3+ years. And what we're doing is we're modeling Christ. We're modeling disciple making. We're modeling compassion. We're modeling all of this so that when they come to Christ and all the pieces fall into place, things start to click. Yeah. And they're already mobilized for multiplication. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be a stumble forward. Yeah. But that's okay.
That's life.
It's beautiful. I mean, look at the disciples. Oh my gosh, talk about stumbling forward. Yeah. and Jesus was, he wrestled with it, and sometimes it was like, ugh,
The beauty of it is you're saying they can do it on day 2. Mm-hmm. Well, that's also because they're coming from different experiences, different stories than you are. So they're able to reach people far better than you can. Oh, man. Because they're there.
Yes, absolutely.
It's beautiful.
And that's the beauty. And this is the good problem that we're getting ready to deal with Cast Member Church. And that is we've got all these people scattered all over the world. And they now have circles of influence where they are.
Right. With their own people,
with their families, with their friends, with the people that God has put there. And all of a sudden, this is, the pastor side of me is going, okay, I've got to give up control because the temptation is to keep it all together. Oh, we've got to, pastors, we like to we won't admit it, but we kind of like to control, control the narrative, so to speak. This is a wild horse. And you've got to be willing to release those wild horses and be able to let them run free and do I'm so grateful that all these cast members want to stay connected to us, and we will resource them. We will equip them. We will cheer for them. We will do we will bind their wounds. We will do whatever. But eventually this is going to outlive me. This is going to, and it should. The next person that comes in will take it to the next level. This is all, I had the privilege of getting this set in motion. But do I think that I'm the one who's going to finish it? Oh, give me a break. No. So I feel like things are moving forward in a way that I hold on loosely, if that makes sense. I kind of guide the vision. I make sure that, what we're doing is what God's called us to do. But every single day, God, throws in a wild card where it's like, oh, didn't expect that. Okay, let's see where he's going with that. Yeah. And so it's it's like the church in the book of Acts. Church in the book of Acts was wild. It was messy. It was all kinds of things going on. Of course, throw in persecution and it scatters.
Just keep things interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm thrilled that we're returning to an age where God is you can sense that he's doing some separate. He's calling us back to that. It's not a pretty faith. It's not a packaged faith with a beautiful ribbon on it. It's broken open. It's spilling out. And, but I think one person put it best. It's a beautiful mess. And I love that. That. And I think that's what the church is, because think of the 2 words, beautiful because of Jesus, mess because of us, but yet together. Yeah. It's what he's called it to be. That's the church. That's Cast Member Church. And I believe that that's where the church is going in the future.
Yeah. And I love, just like you said, it's a beautiful mess. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to go be a part of something that looks perfect.
Well, they might. I mean, they might, but
there's no change there.
No, that's it. The question is do you want to be a part of something that's going to get into your business and help you shine brighter for Jesus? Yeah. Or do you want to control your own narrative? You want to, you want to be able to, Jesus used a word for that. It's called a hypocrite. Which, comes from the Greek word meaning mask wearer. Jesus doesn't call us into that. He calls us to, the masks are gone. We are who we are. This is my mess. This is what Jesus has done with it.
There's enough fake in the world. And I think that that we are a people desperate for reality. We are desperate. And that's the thing, is what's crazy is that even reality TV is the farthest thing. It's manufactured. We're looking for people that are real. They're raw. They're not coming polished. They're just saying, this is me. And like you said, I want to be seen. I want to be heard. I want to be loved.
I want to be understood.
All these things. I want to be known.
That's it. This is where the culture collision is happening. And this is the best way I can describe it. The church is like a big ship. I've heard people say, well, the church is like a cruise ship and it should be a battleship. No, I'm not going to go there. But let's just say that the church is like a ship. And the bigger the ship is, the harder it is to turn. Okay? So I believe what God is doing, and this is just the gospel according to Steve. Okay? So I can't say that this is going to be accurate, but I'm sensing that even with all of the mess of virus and things like that have been going on, that there's this shaking of the church. I believe that what's happening is God is not calling us to be a ship anymore. He's calling us to be a fleet of sailboats, individual sailboats, thousands of them, hundreds of thousands of them, each one piloted by a follower of Jesus who knows how to read the wind, aka Holy Spirit, who can understand the currents that they're riding on, aka culture. And if we can raise up followers of Jesus to be individual disciple makers, wherever they work, wherever they play, if we can empower that, we have a church that has to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
And because I honestly, I lead a church and I know that I'm not going to reach every single Disney cast member. But I know that there's a cast member probably in our church that can connect with 10 or 12 that's who they're going to connect with. And if I equip that one, it multiplies. If I equip this one over here, it multiplies. If they equip, now it gets interesting. All of a sudden, it's like a popcorn machine. Pop, 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 pop. And we have this thing called the church. And each person in the church is following what God has called them to do. The wind may be blowing in one direction, but each sailboat is learning how to capture that wind the way it's created to do that. And that's organic. You've got boats bumping into each other. You've got all kinds of things.
Taking on water a couple times.
Yeah, no doubt. But it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And all those sailboats can turn on a dime. If God says go left, you go left. If God says go right, you go right. God says, turn around, you can do it. A ship can't do that.
Takes a little bit more.
So that to me is when, going back to where we started, Cast Member Church will never have a building.
Yeah.
Because we don't need it.
You don't want it.
You don't want it. I mean, if we had a building right now, we'd be going backwards, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Focusing on people who do not know Jesus. We have a church filled with people who have encountered him, who are learning about him, who are still trying to figure some things out. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. But it is so vibrant. It is so amazing to connect with these people and watch what God is doing. Front row seat to transformation. And of course, the last one is a discipling culture. And for 9 years, we've been making disciples, and most of them don't even know it. But we've been doing it, and now the fruits are starting to pop. And it's like, we're starting to hear things like, I see what you guys have been doing. This is really, and they're already prepared for the next generation.
Yeah.
That's the best adventure to be a part of. I 9 years ago, I would never go back. I love what God has done. Yeah. And I can never, if you were to ask me what a normal church is, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I just know that what God is doing in us is something I can't give up. I love it.
Yeah.
Those are dangerous words, I know. Tomorrow God's going to say, funny you said that last night. But, but the truth of the matter is, this has been the best part of my ministry. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and we have a saying in our church, the best is yet to come. And that's it. I truly believe that. The last 9 years has just been has just been a prologue to the good stuff. So,
and how many people think, oh, there's no way, but by you saying that to go, it's real.
Oh yeah, it's real.
And it's happening.
It's real. And I guess my encouragement to people is this is not a Disney thing. This is a God thing. And if it's a God thing, he can do it in you.
Yeah.
He can do it. It starts with expressing value, building trust, and offering hope. Start with that and be intentional. And then talk to me a year from now. And I bet you anything, you've got some really good, deep relationships that are moving one step closer to Jesus every time.
100%.
Yep. That's what it's all about.
And you've taken so many of these experiences and these stories and these things that you just kind of put in your proverbial tool bag over the years of doing this and compiled so many of them in your first book, A Guide to Life Beyond Imagination.
A guide to a life beyond imagination, which is I didn't want to write a book. I didn't want to be one of those guys. Every pastor is supposed to write a book, and I didn't want to be one of those guys. And I had a publisher who was persistent, to say the least, and they wanted me to do the cast member church story. Okay. And I was like, the story's still being written. I don't want to write something as soon as it comes out. Oh, by the way, there's 10 more chapters that we should have written. So I just put it off. I didn't want to do it, and I really didn't even know if I could do it. And then one day, we had created this disciple making tool. And I was teaching it to somebody, and they said, wow, I really wish you could teach this at our church, or I wish you could, And I started thinking, well, maybe there might be a book there, because I'm all for helping people learn how to make disciples. I mean, anything to help people make disciples. And I thought, so I contacted the publisher. I said, what do you think about a book, that simplifies disciple making? A simple tool to help people learn how to hear God clearly, follow him courageously, because you're going to need to when he speaks. Yeah. And how to, keep moving forward confidently. How do you do that? Or how that would be done. And they came back, they said, well, send us send us the first section, or, whatever. Yeah. So I did. And they said, okay, you've got a book here. And so I finished the book. I couldn't believe it. I sat down, and I think it was a couple months that I did nothing but write every day. And I finished the book. And so we released it about a year ago, and it's been a real blessing. I get stories all the time from people saying, our church is using it's called the Quest Compass. It's a little simple triangle. Like I said, everything I do is a triangle. But it's a real simple tool. It has to be, in order for people to understand it and remember it. Yeah. And so that's, that book. And then the book I'm working on right now is actually what we've been talking about, reimagining evangelism through relationship, and the idea of expressing value, building trust, and offering hope, and putting it in a book form where you can read it and reread. It's not going to be a long book, but you can read it, reread it, and just draw encouragement, and maybe, figure out, this is what I'm going to do with this person in my life, or this group of people in my life. And so hopefully that will be out early 2021. Cool. Yeah, but I'm excited. I don't even have a name for it yet. Every title I keep coming up with, my publisher goes, yeah, keep thinking. So I'm like, wow, normally I'm great with titles, but it's good. It's a lot of fun. And, but I'm hoping it helps people. Anything I can do, that's my other, it's cast member church, and there's this other side of me. It's like, how can I encourage people to step out in faith and live intentionally? I love inspiring people, and that the books are able to do that. Yeah. Well, I love your first book. I can't wait for your second one, honestly. Me neither. And you have inspired me. I mean, after hearing your stories about what you've done, just walking the promenade in World Showcase, there have been trips where I've gone and I'll pass by Morocco, and all of a sudden I think of that story, and there have been times where I've just got in the back and I've sat and I have literally just put my head between my knees and wept, because I have felt nothing but the idea of just like knowing that the Lord loves me, that he loves these people. And just to take a moment to go, Father, help them to feel that love, to come to that realization. And I'm not saying that everybody listening to this needs to go and do this if you don't feel like that's your thing, but just to go and grab a place and say, there's value here. Well, here's what I tell people is go walk through any Disney park. I don't care. Walk through a Disney park, spot a cast member with a name tag. Okay. The name tag has their name, it says where they're from.
Yeah.
All right. Now, you don't have to talk to them. You don't have to talk to them, but you can pray for them. You can actually step off to the side and you can say, this is Tammy from Wichita. Lord, you know Tammy's needs. I don't know what's going on in her life. She looks a little tired. Of course, every cast member looks a little tired, now, but in the heat of summer. But Lord, you know Tammy's needs, and sometimes you can ask God, give me insight. Yeah. Give me insight on how to pray for her and all. Now, sometimes you may feel comfortable enough to go up to a cast member, just talk to them. Don't get weird, Don't start preaching but just find out. A couple of questions I like to ask cast members. This is really fun. This is great. You will never have a problem when you do this. Is ask a cast member, so what brought you to Disney? Another question you can ask is, so what's your favorite thing about working for Disney?
Yeah.
And the third thing you can ask is, so what are your plans after Disney? In that little conversation. By the way, who doesn't want to talk about themselves?
Exactly.
It's like,
you get them.
Yeah, you get that. You're expressing value, by the way. In that short conversation, even if you only get to one question, but let's say you get through all three questions, you've learned a little bit about their past, their present, and their future. Now you've got something to pray about.
Yeah.
So you can walk off and you can start interceding for Tammy or whoever it is, knowing a need that they have. Yeah. And it doesn't take that. It's not just intercessory prayer. It's guerrilla intercessory prayer. You're going in and but this is, again, you could do this at Walmart.
Yeah.
You could do this
and it's intentionality.
It's just living intentional. And it's a great feeling when you lay your head down at night going, wow, there was this conversation and there was this conversation. And God, I planted seeds today. So you're on.
Yeah.
But hey, go back to that same grocery store, go back to that same place where you get your oil change, go back to class or whatever, keep expressing value, building trust, and offering hope. Jesus does the heavy lifting. You just have to be obedient.
Come on.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, the pleasure. It has been mine. Thanks, Zach.
Well, that's all the time for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. I'd like to thank our guest, Steven Barr, for coming on the show and taking some time out of his evening to talk with us. I love Steven's heart for people. It's so infectious. He and I could have talked for hours and hours, but we just figured that 90 minutes was probably enough for this particular episode. I really hope you guys walk away from this conversation feeling enlightened, possibly inspired to be more intentional with the people in the world around you. You can find Steven's book, A Guide to Life Beyond Imagination, on Amazon. And how about this outro music? That always puts me in such an upbeat mood, makes me drum on my steering wheel as I'm driving around. Probably drawing looks from the other drivers, but that really doesn't matter. The song is Nurse by Corey Jess, and you can stream it on Spotify and iTunes. Want to stay connected with the show? You can follow on Instagram and give us a like on Facebook. I'll post behind-the-scenes pictures and updates on all the latest episodes. So like, comment, and subscribe. Also, if you would, leave me a 5-star rating on iTunes. Tell me if you're enjoying the show. Tell me if you're not enjoying the show. I just want to hear your feedback. It's super helpful. It opens the door for other people to hear the show, and that's great. For you, for me, for them, everybody. Everybody. I'm Zach Brown, and I want you to remember, no one ever said, that man would look so much better with a perm. Have a good one.